A chemical spill, a blinded child, a city drowning in corruption. This should be a tragedy, but it became something else. They say the eyes are the windows to the soul. What happens when those windows close forever? These were the words Matt Murdock's father whispered as his son lay in a hospital bed, eyes bandaged, sight gone forever. But in losing his vision, Matt gained something else, a power that would transform him into one of Marvel's most complex heroes. Not because he can see in the darkness, but because he learned to embrace it. For over 2,000 years, Stoic philosophy has guided warriors, emperors, and thinkers through their darkest moments. It teaches one core truth: control what you can, accept what you cannot, and master yourself when chaos surrounds you. Matt Murdock embodies this ancient wisdom whether he realizes it or not. Blind lawyer by day, masked vigilante by night. He fights for justice in a city where justice seems like a fairy tale. The law has limits. The streets have their own rules. And when rage burns inside him, what stops Daredevil from becoming the very thing he fights against? Daredevil's journey is a battle between stoic virtue and human desire, between justice and vengeance. And today, we'll break down the 5 stoic principles that define his life and the cost of following them. Most of us run from pain. We avoid it, numb it, escape it. But Stoics saw pain differently, not as punishment, but as training. When chemicals blinded young Matt Murdock, his world didn't shrink, it exploded. Every sound amplified, every touch intensified, every scent became a story. His father's boxing gloves cracking against leather. Rain hitting concrete 3 blocks away. The racing heartbeat of a liar across the room. Where others saw disability, Matt's mentor Stick saw opportunity. The gift isn't what you lost, kid, it's what you found. Day after day, Stick knocked Matt down, bloodied his knuckles, pushed him past breaking, not out of cruelty, but necessity. Pain wasn't something to endure, it was something to study, to understand, to transform. This is the first pillar of Stoicism that defines Daredevil. Resilience isn't avoiding suffering, it's converting it into strength. When Wilson Fisk's men left him half dead in an alley, Matt didn't retire the mask. He crawled back to his feet. When Bullseye used his own billy club to break his spine, Matt didn't surrender. He rebuilt himself. But there's a shadow side to this resilience. When does endurance become addiction? When does strength through suffering become just suffering? The average person is a slave to their emotions. Anger controls them, fear paralyzes them, desire blinds them. But a Stoic understands that emotions aren't commands, they're information. This is where Daredevil's greatest battles are fought, not on rooftops, but inside his own mind. When Matt stands over Wilson Fisk, fists clenched, heart pounding, everything in him screams for vengeance. This is the man who destroyed Hell's Kitchen, who ordered the hit on Matt's father, who nearly killed everyone Matt loves. One punch. That's all it would take. But he stops himself, not because he can't kill Fisk, but because he won't. The moment Matt Murdock crosses that line, Daredevil dies. The devil would no longer be a symbol of justice, just another predator in the dark. I beat you, Matt tells Fisk. Not by killing him, not by becoming him, but by controlling the rage inside himself. This internal struggle defines Matt's every night in the mask. The radar sense that guides him through darkness can't help him navigate the storm within. When his ex-girlfriend Elektra was murdered, his control nearly shattered. When his best friend Foggy discovered his secret, shame nearly consumed him. Stoics call this the discipline of assent, the power to choose which emotions we follow and which we merely observe. It's why Matt confesses so often, not just for forgiveness, but for clarity, for control. But here's the question. Daredevil forces us to consider. What if emotional control isn't freedom, but another prison? What if some demons should be released, not contained? I have to do this? How many times has Matt Murdock said those words? To Karen, to Foggy, to himself in the silence of his apartment. The Stoics believed in a radical idea, that personal happiness isn't the purpose of life. What matters is virtue, doing what's right regardless of the cost. This is what separates the comfortable from the great. Matt could walk away. He could be just a lawyer, fighting injustice in the courtroom instead of on rooftops. He could have a normal life, relationships that don't end in heartbreak, nights that don't end in bandages and stitches. But he doesn't, because he hears what others can't. The muffled screams through apartment walls, the whispered threats in back alleys, the silent tears of those who've given up on justice. When you can do the things I can do, and you don't, and then the bad things happen, they happen because of you. It wasn't Spider-Man who said those words first. It's the unspoken oath that drives Matt Murdock every night. His law practice suffers, his body breaks, his relationships crumble. But still, he puts on the mask. Not because it makes him happy, but because it's necessary. This is perhaps the most painful aspect of the Stoic path. Sacrifice without recognition. Matt can never tell the people he saves who he really is. He can never accept their gratitude or see the lives he's changed. He fights in darkness for people who will never know his name. But what if duty becomes obsession? What if sacrifice becomes self-destruction? At what point does Matt's sense of responsibility become a way to punish himself for sins he hasn't committed? Why me? It's the question most people ask when tragedy strikes, when the diagnosis comes, when the accident happens, when life crumbles without warning. But it's a question Matt Murdock never asks. The ancient Stoics had a concept called amor fati, the love of fate. Not just accepting what happens to you, but embracing it as necessary, as right, as part of a greater design. When Matt lies broken on a church pew, body shattered after a building collapse, he doesn't curse God for his blindness or his suffering. He whispers through bloody lips, "I'm not asking for forgiveness, I'm just asking for strength." This acceptance isn't passive. It's not surrender. It's the recognition that fighting reality is like punching the ocean, exhausting and pointless. Instead, Matt channels his energy toward what he can change. He doesn't waste time wishing he could see. Instead, he learns to fight blind better than most can fight with perfect vision. He doesn't dwell on his father's murder. Instead, he honors his memory by protecting the neighborhood Jack Murdock loved. This Stoic acceptance extends to Matt's understanding of evil itself. Where others see monsters, Matt sees broken people making terrible choices. He understands that Kingpin wasn't born a villain. He was shaped by the same cruel city that shaped Daredevil. But there's a dangerous edge to this acceptance. When does embracing your fate become an excuse for unnecessary suffering? When Matt refuses medical attention, when he pushes away those who love him, when he returns night after night to a war he can never win. Is that acceptance or something darker? At what point does amor fati become a form of slow suicide? Every night, Matt Murdock might die. This isn't pessimism, it's reality. No superpowers of regeneration, no alien technology, no magic hammer. Just a man with enhanced senses in a thin suit, fighting against guns and knives and superpowered killers. The ancient Stoics practiced something called Memento Mori. Remember that you will die. Emperors had slaves whisper it in their ears during victory parades. Philosophers kept skulls on their desks, not to be morbid, but to gain clarity. For Daredevil, death isn't an abstract concept, it's a partner in every fight. He's been clinically dead 3 times. He's had last rites read to him twice. He's written his will more times than he's updated his legal practice website. Most people run from their mortality. Matt runs toward it. This constant awareness of death strips away everything trivial. Office politics don't matter when you might not see tomorrow. Social media status means nothing when you felt your heartbeat fading. The fear of failure evaporates when you regularly face the ultimate failure. It's why Matt can jump off buildings without hesitation. Why he can face down Bullseye's deadly accuracy or Nobu's ancient weapons. Not because he doesn't fear death, but because he's already made peace with it. "I'm not afraid to die," Matt once told Stick. His old mentor just laughed. "That's what worries me, kid. Because there's a razor-thin line between facing death bravely and courting it deliberately. Between accepting mortality and being drawn to it. Between fighting despite death and fighting because of it." When Matt stands on that rooftop, listening to the heartbeat of his city, we have to wonder, is he there to save Hell's Kitchen or to punish himself? Daredevil stands at the intersection of opposing forces, between justice and vengeance, between duty and desire, between acceptance and resistance, between life and death. He is what happens when ancient Stoic wisdom collides with modern vigilante justice. A blind man who sees more clearly than anyone. A Catholic who practices pagan philosophy without realizing it. A lawyer who breaks the law to uphold it. Perhaps that's why Matt Murdock resonates so deeply. His struggle isn't just physical, it's philosophical. It's the battle we all fight in different ways. How much should we endure before walking away? Where's the line between resilience and self-destruction? When does discipline become denial? When does duty become martyrdom? Daredevil doesn't answer these questions, he embodies them. And in his endless fight for Hell's Kitchen, we see our own struggles reflected back at us. The next time life blinds you with pain or loss or failure, remember, darkness isn't always the end of the story. Sometimes, it's where the hero is born. This is Silver Screen Stoics, and as Marcus Aurelius quotes, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way."